The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the home for Autism Live. It is also the home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. So thrilled to be here with you on this Thursday morning. And man, have we got a big show. I mean, a big show. Just like Ed Sullivan in the old days, even before my time. But lots and lots of guests and a lot of new ideas and some things I think that are really going to give you hope and inspire you no matter where you are in the spectrum or where you are on the actual spectrum or who you love on the spectrum. So we like to cover autism from a 360-degree perspective, and I think today we're really getting it done. So in any case, the whole next 2 hours, we hope to be interactive with you live here. So Samantha's going to show you some of the different ways that you can connect with us, while I will remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, lots of things to click on and do. But if you click on the triangle that's on the computer screen, that will start either the live show or the most recently recorded live show playing. Now, if you want to go back in time, you can, and you can do that on our YouTube channel, on our Roku channel, on iTunes, but you can do it right from that site. There's a memo tab up in the upper left-hand corner. If you click on that, it will give you the 100 most recent shows, and you can fast forward, rewind, do whatever it is that you would like to do to get the information that you need. Also on that homepage is something that we call the live feature. If you put your cursor in the box that says your question, and all you have to do is type and hit enter. That's it. There's no having to log in, remember a username or a password that has this many letters in it and this many special characters. You don't have to do one of those things where you prove that you're not a robot that always gets me confused, right? You don't have to do any of that. You don't have to give a credit card because it's all free. And I love the fact that it is. And it's free and anonymous on that site. We don't know who you are. All I see is the little, exactly what you wrote that pops up. And I only share that with the audience if I'm 100% sure that the person can't be identified. So write in, use that feature. It's one of the many different ways that you can get in touch with us. And it happens in almost real time. I always say, write in early in a segment if you think you have a question, because a lot of times the guests, the segments are kind of short and we finish the segment, they leave and walk out, and then I get your message for them. So send it in early. That's my advice to you. But we love having an opportunity to talk with you and have you interact with our experts. And we do have a lot of experts on the show today. I always like to remind you that I'm not one of them, that's not my particular spot here. I'm the operator that, helps to connect you to things. But I'm not one of the experts. I'm an autism mom and a former teacher, and I'm proud of both of those things, and I've been covering autism now for 10 plus years, and I have opinions and I'm adamant about them, but that doesn't make me an expert, and I don't want you to confuse me with the experts. But I will be in your corner, and I will be cheering you on and hoping and helping in any way that I can, because I know how important it is to get you the help and support that you need. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, a practitioner, or you yourself are on the autism spectrum, I want to help you to get to the things that are going to supercharge everything and have it make sense, because people helped me along the way, and really that's what I live and breathe for, to be able to help you to get what you need, okay? Si se puede, right? We hold hands, we do this together. All right, we like to start every Thursday morning with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the heck are they talking about and why should we care? Because, if it doesn't save me time and money, I really don't have time for it, right? Uh, you know, it's nice to learn new things, but when you're really behind the eight ball and it's your loved one or yourself and you need help and support, I don't really want to be taken to school. Like, just speak in plain English. So we go over these. First, we give you the actual definition, then we give you a working definition so that you can get a grip on it, right? And whenever possible, we like to try to make fun of the definition, the actual definition. So here we go. Our jargon term for today is EIBI. We're going to alphabet land. Sometimes it just feels like you are drowning in letters, right? We go into acronymville. And, schools are really good at throwing around the letters, aren't they? But the truth is, so is the field of psychology, especially in behaviorism. So here we go. EIBI. Doesn't it just roll trippingly right off the tongue? Let's take a look at what this actually is. EIBI stands for Early Intensive Behavioral Intervention. EIBI. Okay. And you're going to hear this a lot, EIBI, right? Because it's the thing that everybody needs to fight for. Like, honestly, this is the thing that everybody needs to fight for. So let's take a look at what our working definition is. ABA therapy as soon as possible. And I really want to stipulate that it's quality ABA therapy as soon as possible, right? Because we know, if you're on this show at all, that it's not one and the same. And that a lot of people are hanging out a shingle because, let's face it, insurance is paying for ABA now, and more places have it, and more people are like, yeah, I do that. And the truth is that in order to be a BCBA, I know the letters, right? A board certified behavior analyst, which is the person that you want to be designing your ABA program, should be a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst. And if they are, then what we know, if they are certified as a board certified behavior analyst, they then know about they know about ABA. They know about behavioral intervention, and there are some basics that they know. It doesn't mean that they know about autism. And so that's a little bit, and it's dicey. And you'll see that there are some people who have said, well, I went to school for psychology and I can get my BCBA, and I'm going to do that because this field is wide open, and they want to help people, but they don't have the experience. And you've got to have people who have experience, and they have to be committed to doing this in a quality way, right? Those things have to be in place. But then the other important part is starting as soon as possible. And that means now. And I know everybody's going to have some feelings about this, right? Because somewhere out there right now, there's the mom of a 14-year-old who goes, oh, does that mean I missed it? And I want to say to you, you don't have time for that. You don't have time for that thought right now. We'll come back to that later on after you've started ABA, because it's not too late at 14 to have your child doing ABA. It's going to look vastly different at 14 than it would have looked at 3, but it's still super important, and it's going to be productive for your child because it's going to be super specific to where they are in this point of time. And I know there's the dad of an 8-year-old watching who says, did I miss it? And I'm going to tell you, you don't have time for that. Look what it says, ABA therapy as soon as possible. For a moment, I'm going to ask you to forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know when your child was 3, right? And we'll cry about that, and I'll hold your hand about that later on. But right now, that 8-year-old needs ABA therapy. And that 8-year-old is going to make progress getting ABA therapy. And we'll worry about all the rest of it. It's not going away. We'll deal with all the emotions that you've got about how much time did I miss later on. But every minute that you pause is a minute that they're not getting ABA. And for those of you who have children that are 2, 3, and 4, I'm going to say to you what you probably have already heard, although I am amazed and mystified sometimes that professionals are not telling you this. You need to get early intensive behavioral intervention now. And when they tell you, let's take a year and wait, you need to say, show me the study that shows that that's effective, because there isn't one. And when they say, oh, okay, well, we'll just start you at 15 hours, and they try to tell you that that's intensive, you need to be educated enough to be able to say to them, that's not intensive. Can you show me a study that shows that 15 hours of ABA therapy for a 3-year-old is effective? And guess what? They can't, because there isn't one. Early intensive, and early we're just going to say as soon as possible, right? Whatever age that is. Honestly, if you've got a 2-year-old who's not talking now, but then in terms of the intensive, it's going to depend on the child's age. But if it's before a child goes to school, you've got to push to be in the 30 to 40 hour a week window. 30 to 40 hours a week. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what you've got to do. And because you know why? That's what all the studies show that it is effective. If you need help with that, you can write to me, and I'm going to give you my email address, and I will send you a handful of studies. It's by no means all of them, but there's studies that show a nice mix. I've given them to lots of parents to take to doctors and schools and say, here's what I have. What do you have? There's a study that shows that compares children who were getting intensive ABA and children who were getting nothing and children who were getting 10 hours of ABA. And the children who got 10 and got nothing made the same amount of progress, where the other kids, whoop, right? There are other studies that compare different things, but there's a nice array that you can go in and say, here's what I have. What do you have? And they don't have anything. And that's really key. So EIBI, and that means quality ABA now. If we could just shorten it to that, that's what it's got to mean to you. And I'm telling you right now, as parents and as teachers, we need to stand in the truth of that. Science is there to back us up, but there will be people who will try to convince us to take less. And you can't let that happen. You just can't. And I will hold your hand during it, and so will a bunch of other people who have been there and done that, because the studies are there. It's on your side. Fight for this. Get yourself EIBI. Get that for your family. Get that for your kiddos. It's what has been shown to be effective. But don't trip yourself up on the, well, early must have meant 3 or early must have meant 4. Now. All right. I love talking about EIBI because it has the ability to be life-changing if we go all in. But too many people are out there hearing, oh, just do 15, right? Nope, that's not the ticket. We've been talking about this a lot in this last week. Hopefully that message is getting out to everybody. And if you're not sure, please, I said I was going to give you my email address, plus what you can call me too. Don't miss this opportunity. So there's my email, s.penrod@autism-live.com. Write to me. Let's talk it out, because I can't bear the thought that there are people out there that still aren't getting the message, right? I want you to get the message because it changed my life. And that's really where I'm coming from, you guys. When I think about if I hadn't had people to say to me, what are you thinking? No. I know it seems crazy, but you got to fight for this 40 hours a week, where we would be. Because I know where we are now, and it's worth everything. It's worth everything, you guys. So fight for it. Okay. Don't want to get too emotional at the start of the show. So moving on, we always have a question of the day for you. And our question today is, what's giving you the most progress? I'll tell you what I wanted that question to be, but I didn't know if everybody would get it, is what's giving you the biggest bang for your buck, right? That's one of the things that I always would hear autism moms talk about in the early days. What's giving you your biggest bang for the buck? And when people ask me, they'll look at my kid and they'll go, oh my gosh. Well, a lot of people just think, oh, well, he was one of those kids that was always high functioning. No, I'm sorry. That's just not the truth. I know everybody wants that to be the truth, but it wasn't. He wasn't one of those high functioning kids. I had the bite marks on my arm. I couldn't, we were talking yesterday about the mom who said, I can't walk outside with him. Man, that was my kid. And my kid is super awesome now. So for me, what gave us the most progress, I just got to be honest with you, the fact for my kid, and this is not this case for everybody's kid, the fact that we got him as healthy as possible while we were waiting to start ABA, I think really helped us. And for my kid, that meant the gluten-free, casein-free diet. And eventually it meant taking some other things out of his diet for a while. And eventually it meant him doing, because he had a big yeast overgrowth, and then eventually doing methyl B12. But those are the things that supported the big thing, which was quality ABA. But I couldn't just throw him in to do the ABA without making sure that he was healthy as possible, and that we kept him healthy. And that we saw that over time, there were some things that he needed biomedically, and he needed that diet. That really made him, it helped him to be able to learn as much as possible. And in the midst of all that, we got as organic as we possibly could be. But the ABA got it done. Let's not quibble about that. The ABA got it done. We just did the other things to set him up for success, because ABA is not easy, right? It's a lot of learning, it's immersive, and we wanted him to be as healthy as possible. So those two things combined, and then doing the hours. And we did the hours. We certainly did the hours, and we know that, and I learned what I had to learn, and so did my husband. So there you go. The secret sauce, right? I want you guys to write in and tell other audience members, what have you seen the most progress with? Because we all need to share. It's not one size fits all. Talk to each other, write in on Facebook or wherever, and let us know what gave you the most progress so that we can further that conversation. All right, we always have a topic of the week. And our topic this week is strength over time equals power. Do you know this equation? Somebody told this to me years ago, and it really kind of rocked me back, and I went, oh my gosh, I think this is true in the universe for me and for everything else, that strength over time equals power. That anything that you want to do, if you do enough of the right things over and over and over again, something powerful will happen. Take the Grand Canyon as a case in point. Drip of water, drip of water, drip of water over time makes a big difference. And that is how life is. And the truth is that little difference could add up to a big fabulous thing, or that little thing could end up being something that is a poop sandwich. I'm sorry, but it can be. You know, I remember years ago when I was just out of college and I was riding the New York subway system, because I lived and worked in New York, and there was a youngish woman, young to me now, she was probably in her 30s, mid 30s, sitting across the subway from me, and I was, 21, so, she was middle-aged to me at that time. But she was frowning. And then at one point she relaxed her eyebrows, but she had the deepest wedge by her eyebrow, because so much of her life she had been frowning. And I thought, she has to have done that over and over and over again to have made this crease in her face at 35. It's kind of, impressive. But you see, this is an equation. It's for all of us. It's the same thing for all of us, and it's the same thing for our kids. So if every day we will give in to behaviors that we know we shouldn't, but we have to because it's the moment, and we give into it, and over time we build this scenario in which our kids believe, I must tantrum in order to get something. And that equation is really hard to live with. And I just want to offer up that there's a different equation, that if we make these little shifts day by day, and really that's what ABA does, is little shifts and rewards them. Little shift and see how great you're doing. Little shift, great. Little shift, big reward. Little shift, yay, right? Amazing things happen. Strength over time equals power. So for anybody who thinks that ABA is going to start and just, boop, and it's all going to be good, magic potion, right? That's not how it works. Little shifts over time. Strength over time equals power. big, big power. So that's what we're going to focus on a little bit today. Not reinventing the wheel and restarting everything and little itty bitty shifts. All right. So big guests today. I just love this. So coming up in just a few minutes, we have Melissa Deutow, who is a card expert. She's going to be answering some questions that you guys have written in. Then we have Dave Hirschberger from Touch Chat. This is a newer app that I'm hearing is absolutely off the charts amazing. It's a way to get functional communication with a kiddo that is faster, better, more intuitive. So we're going to talk with him about why that is. Then we've got Rob Baird. This is a gentleman who is fairly newly diagnosed on the autism spectrum, who spent his life in corporate America and is now speaking out about what working in the corporate world is like for individuals with autism. What are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the ways that autism can help corporate America? But mainly focusing on what his experience is so that we can all learn from it. And then we're going to end out the hour with Yadira Calderon, amazing mom of a daughter on the autism spectrum who happens to also have dyslexia. And she has done a particularly good job of figuring out how to make this a positive experience for her and her daughter. I think she's got an inspirational message that you guys will enjoy. And we'll talk a little bit about what happens when dyslexia gets thrown into the mix. It's not unusual for our kids to be twice exceptional, have autism and something else. And it can feel like it's going to sink your boat, but Yadira's got some different ideas about that, so we're going to talk with her. All of that plus some mindfulness, it's all coming up. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hi, Lisa Ackerman back with your Talk of Facts, the autism journey questions and answers that you need to help your child make the progress they need. I'm here to talk to you about one really important item. A lot of people ask me the question, well, Lisa, I want to see this specialist in another state. How do I do that? You know, I don't own a jet. I don't have the ability to fly without great pain and travel. Not a problem. We know how to get this done. So I actually encourage families, even though in travel can be a tremendous hardship getting a child with autism through security, through the plane, and in the journey to where they need to go. We have a whole white paper on TACA about how to travel with special needs kids. So it can be done. So travel, we know that can be expensive. Not everyone has an unlimited supply of cash for air flights. We love and work with this group called miracleflights.org. They're fantastic. They will fly you and your child, so one parent, one adult, anywhere in the United States, one time a year. Also in the TACA document are places to stay. So often you will have people in your life that love and support your family and don't know exactly how to help. Ask them to gift you their travel or their rewards cards or coupons for hotel, rental car. That's a great way to be able to get maybe a hotel room that has a refrigerator or a microwave and that's close to a Whole Foods, so you don't have that added cost of going out to dinner, especially if your kid has a lot of allergies. It's important to note that there's not a pediatrician or a specialist by every Starbucks in the United States. Close does not always equal best. So I bring up the travel point so you know that travel is possible, number one, and often it's really going to help you get down the road faster for your kid and getting the answers you need from the specialist that knows what to do. So don't be afraid to travel.
Parent to parent, you might be asking yourself, how on earth can I afford ABA therapy for my child? Well, the short answer is you can't. No one can. It's really expensive and it's overwhelming to most families. But the story doesn't end there, fortunately. The first thing that I want you to think about is tapping insurance resources. So many insurance companies are paying for ABA therapy right now. So that's your first best bet. Make sure and see if your insurance company is providing benefits for ABA therapy and check back often. Now, if you see that you don't have insurance right now for ABA, don't panic. There are still other resources. The next place to go is to your local support groups and ask them what local resources there are. That's a great place to ask for information because often states and even counties have support for ABA. And then beyond that, you might consider applying for grants. There are many fabulous grants out there to help you to get support for your ABA therapy. But most important, it's absolutely essential that you get ABA services for your child. We know that that's essential for all of our children and that you won't be able to do it on your own. So seek out those services and support groups that will help you to fund your ABA journey. It's really important to remember that all behaviors happen for a reason. Welcome back. I love that I'm hitting it hard today about the ABA, that we filmed that years ago. It's still true. In any case, I'm so excited that right now, for the first time in the show, we get to welcome Melissa Deutow. And am I saying your name right, Melissa? I should have asked you.
Oh, it's fine. It's Deutow, but it's fine.
Well, then I have it completely wrong then. There wasn't even, I wasn't even in the neighborhood. Deutow. Okay, well, I have it printed wrong. In any case, thrilled to have Melissa here with us. Melissa, take just a second to tell us what your role is at CARD.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. But I started at CARD as a clinical supervisor out of the Aurora, Colorado office. And currently I'm a regional manager designee candidate. So I'm really fortunate to get to oversee offices in Missouri and Michigan as well as Kentucky. So it's been a lot of fun. So I'm really grateful to be here.
And I'm sure that all the families in those states are so excited that you're there, and some of those areas are just growing and starting to get their CARD centers off the ground. So thank you for giving such a loving hand to those places. And I do want to say, every week somebody writes in and says, how do we get CARD where I am? And just know it takes parents. If you're a parent that wants this service, write in, because then Melissa can be somebody who's like setting up a center in your area at some point. It can happen. It does. It happens every day. So, Melissa, we're going to start with the first question. My 8-year-old high-functioning son loves to spin. He says he loves watching everything in the room move really fast and says he doesn't really get dizzy. How can he get this same input during the school day? His 504 allows for movement breaks, but there is only a trampoline, mat, and weighted blanket. And she says, thank you.
Okay. Well, one thing, we'll always throw this disclaimer is you want to make sure any type of intervention, you're going to want to look at the research first, obviously, because that's what we do as BCBAs, as behavior analysts, is what we do. With that being said, just hearing about what the different options are at school, there's a couple different things you could look to do if there's not kind of that same input that he's getting at school. You could potentially look toward him having earning time at home if there's something at home that he really enjoys doing that maybe he doesn't have access to at school. Another option you can look at is teaching him to do it with a peer, because it's really socially appropriate. It's a good opportunity to build those social skills at school. It would be much better for him to spin with somebody as opposed to just by himself, even if it's something that he really enjoys doing. Another thing you could look at, you mentioned that he likes to watch things spin. Are there any things that are appropriate that he can actually watch? Those fidget spinners are a big thing these days, or a video, or even some of those, I think they're Disney toys that spin really fast. So it's something that he could potentially do in the classroom and work toward as reinforcement for some of the other things that you're trying to teach in that setting. Excuse me, there's a lot of research on what's called match stimulation, where you're teaching them to get the same stimulation or the same type of input, just with more socially appropriate behaviors, let's say. But those are just kind of some pretty simple suggestions. But of course, you always want to make sure you're addressing the right function of that behavior and why it's happening, but also making sure if it's something he loves, how can we accommodate him in that type of setting?
I love all those answers. I think that's amazing. And it strikes me, since the school has a trampoline and a mat and a weighted blanket, that there's probably an OT somewhere around there. And maybe the OT has a budget that every year they're ordering something, or if not, I know we've donated things before. And maybe something like it could be as simple as those, I don't know, they must still make them, right? The things that were called sit and spins,
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
right? And they don't take up a whole lot of space, and it's probably a
Mm-hmm.
$20 item that you can get
Yep.
on Amazon and donate it to the school and say, here's my kid's sit and spin.
Right.
But I also love the idea I love that you suggested having him do it with a peer. What a
Yep.
wonderful way for him to connect with somebody else. And
Mm-hmm.
eventually, we always tell the story here on the show about Temple Grandin and how Temple still talks about that her favorite, most reinforcing thing in the world was spinning a metal plate on the end of her bed. And that
Yep.
and she says to me now that she would, she's happy to do it now, and that when she gets overstressed, that she'll spin something, that seeing the colors of it spin.
Yep.
And that what her mom did was she just worked into limiting to, you get this time to spin and the rest of the time you don't. And if you do everything
Yep.
that you're supposed to do, then you get to spin.
Right.
So I love all your suggestions. So I'm going to move on to the next question. My daughter has issues if she gets words wrong on her tests.
Mm-hmm.
She worries about whether she's done bad. She worries about being bad or wrong all the time. She's a kid who wants to do good all the time. If she
Mm-hmm.
doesn't come home with an excellent mark or 100%, she cries for
Mm-hmm.
hours. If we
Yeah.
don't change it for her, what can we do? What can we do to change this?
And that's a tough one too, because I feel like it's a good skill to have. It's a good life skill to have, to want to be good at things and all of that. Although I think we all have our quirks in that area where I have to be good at this or I get really upset. But some of us have an easier time kind of tolerating, even if we are wrong. Okay, what can I learn from this and move on and apply it to the next situation that comes up. But again, you want to always look at the research first and see kind of if there's anything that's been written about this or any interventions that have been successful. But one of my first questions would be, is there like a history? What was the history of this and how did it kind of get shaped into what it is now? Would probably be a first question that I have. And also, I wonder if it depends on the type of assignment. So for example, is it really more focused on academic tasks like math or English or those types of things? Or is it also, if I'm coloring and I make a mistake, is that really hard for me and I have to start all over? So I think looking at what types of things you could potentially do or, work with her on, excuse me, would be starting with, are there any assignments that are maybe a little more tolerable if she does make a mistake? You start there, you provide lots of reinforcement for the tolerance there and being able to handle, okay, I made a mistake, but I'm going to try it again. So starting with assignments that maybe aren't as important to her to get something correct on. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense on that, but
no, it absolutely makes sense. Because I hadn't even thought about that, Melissa. The whole, does she get as upset about a coloring thing as maybe a math test? Because if she doesn't, it's a great place to start with the coloring and gives us a format in which to be like, see, and we colored a little outside the line and it's okay.
Right.
So no, I totally get it.
Right. And then also, and it's a tough thing too. I've actually worked with a young man who had a similar difficulty with getting things wrong and those types of things. So, because you want to be very careful you want to provide reinforcement for tolerating mistakes, but you also don't want to provide too much to where now it's reinforcing to make a mistake and get things wrong. So, peer modeling is also really always a good opportunity for that. If it's happening in the school setting, you can show a friend getting something wrong and they're being okay with it. So that's always a good option too, is to have kind of, again, that socialization there. And then again, you could set things up and set some kind of assignment up to where she does make a mistake. If she tolerates it without crying, she gets reinforcement, or even start smaller where she might whine, but maybe it doesn't develop into full-blown crying. So you can start there and provide reinforcement for that type of tolerance. So, but yeah, always starting with kind of where someone is successful and building on that, because you're going to get a lot more success if you're giving lots of reinforcement up front and then slowly fading it to the ones that are more difficult later on.
And you just made me think of, I keep talking on the show about, we have a Pinterest board for Autism Live, and I've been trying to pin things that I think are really interesting, because in the last 2 years, the resources that are available for autism on Pinterest are amazing. And there's some great posters that are self-talk for when something goes wrong for kids, which I absolutely love. Just phrases that they can start saying to themselves about, well, I made a mistake, but I'm still good and I'm still doing a good job, that you can ask them to be doing while they're doing the thing that's less upsetting to them, so that you build that
Right.
floor. Check it out.
And it's
Pinterest
also-
is cool.
I love Pinterest. Yeah. And there's also kind of within this situation that black and white thinking. So is there that skill of understanding, okay, there's a gray area here somewhere. How big of a problem is this really? If it's, I get everything wrong, that's a huge problem. But if I just get one or two wrong, it's really not that big a deal, and I can move on from that. So
Yeah,
kind
that sort of
teaching more-
thermostat.
Yep.
There's a lesson in skills about that, and I don't know which one it is, but I remember them teaching my son, it looked just like a thermometer, and it said, here, is this a 2 or is this a 3 or is this, something to be really upset about? And we still talk about that. Usually,
it's an important skill for all of us. I use that for sure. Like,
Well,
how
I was
big is
gonna
this
say,
problem, Melissa, really?
usually it's my son saying to me, I'll be really upset about something, and he'll go, now, Mom, is this a 2 or is this a 7? Because in a
Right.
week, are you
This is
still
time
going to
to-
be upset about this? And I go, oh,
Right.
that good ABA. Anyway, moving on to the last question. My son is 4 and only wants to make a long line with his toys and then look at them from different angles. He gets very upset if you move any of the toys. How do I get him to play the right way with them?
Right. No, that's a good one. That's a really common one too that comes up. And again, always going back to the research and seeing what's been done with those types of things. This is again similar to the tolerance training with making a mistake, is tolerance of other people touching my toys, other people moving my toys, or doing something different with my toys in general. But one of the questions I always ask is, what types of toys does this happen with? Is it only cars? Is it trains? Is it, crayons? I've seen people line up crayons, and that's really the only thing they do that with. But some of the things that I've done with some of the great kiddos that I've worked with was, again, starting very small in that, you can prime him and say, okay, I'm going to pick up the red car now, but I'm only going to touch it for a second. Take it for a second, put it right back. And you start there, provide lots of reinforcement for tolerance of that, and allowing you to do that, and then building up to, okay, now I'm going to take it and I'm going to roll it a couple inches and then I'll put it back. So, you can start with those types of tolerance activities. And in some cases, you might even need to start smaller. Some kids get really upset even if you go to reach for it. So you could start with just a touch, and that's all you're going to do for a few days. And then once he builds up that tolerance, then you move on to something a little bit more difficult. Another thing you could look at, again, there's peer modeling. So having him imitate skills that other peers are doing, or even imitate skills that you're doing with the same toy. So he has a set, you have a set, but you can model to this. Look how fun this is. Look how much fun I'm having with the car going up the ramp and down into the garage and those types of things. Another option, again, is if that's something that he really enjoys doing. You mentioned it earlier, Shannon, about, we're going to do this first and then you can do what you want to do. So setting up a play activity where it may be appropriate to line things up. So cars at a car wash, or kids lining up at school, trains on a train track. So this is a really, it's really a good question because it happens so often with a lot of kids. And, any kid really, my niece and nephew used to do this with their toys, and we started very small with them in terms of, we're just going to do this really quickly, and okay, now you can have it back. And then we built up to that. And then they learned that, paired with reinforcement, they learned, oh, this is a lot more fun than lining stuff up. I'm going to do this instead.
Yeah.
Those are just a couple things I would think of.
I love that. I think it's so hard for parents sometimes. We see this behavior of lining things up and it looks weird to us. And honestly, it strikes fear in our heart, like, oh no, it's odd, and what will become of them? And it's happening in this moment, but suddenly it's this, we're on our deathbed and our child is still lining up cars. It gets really in our head. But I just want to say that what you said is so incredibly true, that when something else is happening that looks like more fun, time and time, we've seen the kids leave behind the lining up the toys and go. For my kid, it was that another therapist was playing with the cars and crashing them. Right. And he was like, I have got to be a part of that, because the therapist was over in the corner, not saying, come and do this, but over in the corner going, and then going, oh no, and doing all these voices. And my kid was like, that sounds like a party. I need to be there. And that was the end of him. I mean, there were more times that he would line up the cars, but as soon as somebody would be there and do something, he would be back into it. And then on his own, he began to play and crash the cars. And then we shaped that behavior. But you're right on the money that when it's more fun to do something else, they're going to go and do that. So I just want to say to this mom, don't worry, do what Melissa says.
I mean, depending on the function too, like there's some kids who line them up just to line them up, but I've seen kids, I've worked with kids who put them on a surface and they just want to watch them walk by, and simple intervention like environmental arrangements where you're in a room where there isn't a surface like that, and it's a lot harder to get down on the floor and do that. So it just that behavior, goes away because we place that need on extinction because there's nothing to do this on. It's just a lot harder to do that on the floor.
Absolutely agree. Thank you so much for being with us, Melissa. What a wealth of knowledge you are. And say hi to all of those families in that Midwest range where you're working and helping them to get services. We so appreciate it.
I will do. Thank you so much for having me, and everyone. I really appreciate the questions. That was fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
guys. You too. Bye.
Okay, so wasn't that great? We're going to take a break, and then do we have time to do mindfulness when we come back? Or okay, we don't have time. But that's okay because we're going to talk about Touch Chat with Dave Hirschberger, so stick around.
This is Logan Shepherd. At first glance, he looks like a typical American teenager. He plays in a band, loves hanging out with his friends, he doesn't like doing homework, and he's not really fond of broccoli. But Logan Shepherd is not your typical 14-year-old. Logan was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. He was nonverbal, made no eye contact, and his parents were told to abandon all hope. Instead, his parents began an intensive intervention treatment. At its center was a quality ABA program known as the CARD method. This is Logan Shepherd now.
All I really want to say is, I'm kind of copying Martin Luther King. I kind of have a dream, that one day, I can just, inspire people and never give up. Because, that's what I want to do in life. Because if I can succeed, they can succeed. And I will succeed.
To follow Logan's musical journey, visit www.facebook.com/officialdrummerrock or @drummerrock on Instagram. For more information on the CARD method, visit www.centerforautism.com or call 800-345-CARD. Rock on, Logan.
TouchChat is a full-featured communication application from Saltillo, accessible through iTunes for the iPad, the iPod, or the iPhone. Just like our more sturdy devices from the NovaChat line of products, TouchChat serves as an alternative voice, either as a primary alternative to speech or as a supportive piece to an existing device. The iPod, iPad, or iPhone can be purchased from the Apple Online Store or any retail store that sells them. TouchChat is sold through iTunes under the developer Silverkite. TouchChat currently supports synthesized voices, or you can use a recorded voice. A typical TouchChat screen is made up of the vocabulary area filled with various layouts of buttons. Buttons are selected by tapping or pressing on the touchscreen. Depending upon the type of button, selecting it may speak a word, phrase, or sentence, navigate you to a new page, or perform an editing action. This area is known as the speech display bar. This is the area that text will appear as you type. Tap the X and it will remove the last word. Press and hold the X and it clears the display all at once. The menu bar allows access to editing menus and lets you choose which language configuration will be used. Pages can be linked to one another with navigation actions. These require a button press or a go back to another page. Pages can also be linked to one another with visit actions. No button is required for navigating back. Other button action choices provide many options for empowering the device user in ways to meet their specific needs. All of these actions and the social acceptance of the iPad platforms combined offer quite a powerful communication option with TouchChat. We are excited for the opportunities TouchChat has to offer to the field of AAC.
Welcome back to Autism Live. You just saw a short informational video about something called TouchChat. And let me just tell you, when my phone lines and my emails start to be burned up by people calling me and saying, hey, do you know about this thing? I'm always all ears, right? But in particular, if therapists start calling me up and messaging me and saying, do you know about this? Because this is so much better than what we've used in the past. It really catches my attention. And my social media and things were being burned up by therapists that I trust this last week. And I said, we've got to get these people on the show. So joining us via Skype right now is Dave Hirschberger. He is the CEO of the parent company of TouchChat. And Dave, welcome to Autism Live.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you here. I want to start by asking you very simply, what is TouchChat and why are these therapists calling me up and saying how great it is? What's this all about?
Okay, so TouchChat is an app that essentially transforms an iPad into a communication environment. And so, and sometimes it's used for a bridge until natural voice develops. Other times it's a more permanent or a more long-term solution. And so from a most basic perspective, it allows someone to generate messages and then to have those messages be spoken through the internal speech synthesizer. So if someone who has good motor skills, good spelling skills, they could type messages or use the word predictor system. But many of the individuals who use the system actually have limited or emerging literacy skills, and so we have there's a set of pages that interlink pages that allow someone to generate messages without having to spell them. And if I had to, we feel there's a number of reasons on why people are experiencing success. As a developer and a designer, I would be inclined to sort of point to some of the features and the techie aspects. But in reality, we really believe that it's these vocabulary files. So there's a number of vocabulary files in TouchChat that range pretty broad spectrum of communication needs. And many people use word power. So for example, this is the screen we just saw was word power. And so word power was developed by Nancy Inman. Nancy is a very highly respected clinician who has spent her career working with implementing and developing vocabulary systems for assistive products like this. And essentially what word power allows you to do is to navigate through, to create sentences, and allows you to create it word by word so that you're not locked into a set, some pre-stored sentences, but it also allows you to, but it doesn't require you to generate these words letter by letter. So word power, and then also Words for Life that's available from our sister company, Prentke Romich company, is these are word-based vocabularies that are based on many years of clinical expertise, clinical experience, and so on. And so if I had to sort of choose one area to look at on why people are successful, it really would be the vocabulary systems.
It's very, I'm hearing wonderful things, and I'm hearing it's very intuitive, that it's very quick, the learning curve to be able to make sentences. So I think that's remarkable. I'm curious though, how does something like this come to be? Is this that there was a driving force, that somebody had somebody in their life that couldn't communicate? How did the germ of this idea to create this app happen?
So I have been very fortunate to have been, I have been working in assistive technology now for almost 40 years. Most of this time has been spent in a field called augmentative, AAC, augmentative and alternative communication. And what we really do is that sort of my role in this is to look at technology and see how can we develop an alternative means of communication for someone who can't use their natural speech. And so this has been just an incredible journey over the past number of years. We do things with technology now that we couldn't even have dreamt about 30 years ago. But it's not only the technology that has advanced. There's been just as much advancement in clinical knowledge and clinical experience. So, for example, we know much more now about language acquisition, language development, and how that applies to when other types of technology are being used for speech. We also know much more about for example, kids with autism, how they interact with the world, how they interpret information. And so it was so sort of my role in this is to see how can we take that information and integrate it into technology as it advances. And so when mobile technology like the iPad and iPhone came out, it became apparent that this was an ideal platform. It was readily available. It was relatively inexpensive for many users to be able to, this would make a good platform for this type of product. And so largely what TouchChat is sort of an evolution of something that we've been doing for quite a few years.
And how can families get access to TouchChat?
So TouchChat is available on iTunes. So the basic version is available for $149, and the version with word power is $299. And then there's also other voices that you can get, other languages and so forth.
Remarkable. And it isn't just, as you were saying, it isn't just used by people who are on the autism spectrum. Who else is using this technology and really enjoying it?
So there's a number of, there are many people who can't, who are unable to speak with their natural voice, and there's a number of reasons for this. And every individual is unique, so they have a unique set of abilities, of needs and requirements, and these might have to do with vocabulary, it might have to do with access, it might have to do with portability or durability. And so really the point we want to make, that I want to make, is that this is not necessarily a one-size-fits-all. You really have to look at the individual and look at their specific needs. And, and solutions can vary from anything from manual boards to apps to custom or dedicated devices. But the flexibility that's in TouchChat really allows it to be adapted for varying needs. And, we have individuals who have been diagnosed with apraxia, with selective mutism, with Fragile X, Down syndrome. So really a number of different conditions. But I also would like to add that TouchChat, like any technology, is a tool. And in the same way that we don't expect to give someone a piano and she becomes a gifted musician on her own, the same is true of technology. With, as important as a tool is, it's also important how, to learn how to use that tool. So we can't underestimate the need and the value of clinical intervention and implementation.
Absolutely. We have a regular viewer who is sort of our AAC expert because he uses that kind of technology. And of course, Mike, I don't know if you're watching, Mike Hipple. He gets so excited. He's watching, fabulous. He gets so excited when we cover things that help give functional communication to individuals because he speaks very eloquently through his device about how important it was for him as a young man to be able to find his voice through this. So, Mike, I'm thrilled that you're watching. And I want you to check out Touch Chat, Mike, because I think you're going to really love it. And of course, Mike reminds us on a regular basis that this kind of technology is life-changing. So I'm just curious, what's your favorite success story from Touch Chat?
Wow, this is tough. So I have really, it's been quite an honor to really meet many people whose lives have been changed by what they can do with Touch Chat, and really success. Success looks as different as the variety of individuals who use the technology. I really think that a successful communication is when when a person's voice really allows you to see the person behind it. And so I think what I would like to do is sort of introduce you to a very special young lady. Her name is Mira, and you can meet her or at least see a video clip from her on YouTube. But Mira had a very tumultuous early part of her life. At the age of 5, she was welcomed into a very loving family. And this family soon was able to see that there was much more that Mira had to say than she was able to communicate with her voice. And so a few years ago, she started using Touch Chat. And last year, Apple did a series of commercials with individuals who were using their technology in unique ways. And Mira was one of the stars of one of these commercials, and you can find it on YouTube if you look for, I think it's called Designed for Mira, Designed for Mira P, and Mira is spelled M-E-E-R-A. What I really love about this video is that it shows you who Mira is. So it shows you how Touch Chat allowed the world to see the person that the family already knew was there. So yeah, so Mira's just a very special young lady. Again, she's one of thousands of people who use Touch Chat. One of the reasons I pointed your attention to her is because watching this video shows you much more than I could talking about her for an hour.
All right, we'll have to check it out. I want to thank you for everything that you're doing. Again, where can people go to get the app?
It's available on iTunes. Just do a search for Touch Chat.
Okay, fabulous. And I'm excited for our families to take a look and see, because functional communication is everything. And we have to prioritize that and get that happening. And giving, as you said, giving somebody an opportunity not only to have their voice heard, but to get to meet the person who they are it's invaluable. You can't begin to imagine how amazing that can be until you've had the opportunity to do it. So thank you so much for being with us, and give our love to everybody at Touch Chat.
Okay, we will do that. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. I told you we're having big interviews today. So we're going to take a break, and then I don't know where we are in the timeline. Do we have time for mindfulness? We have time for mindfulness. Okay, so we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and do mindfulness before we have our interview with Rob Baer. And he's going to be talking with us about autism in the corporate world. Stick with us.
Are those your eyes? Is that your smile? I've been looking at you forever, yet I never saw you before. Are these your hands?
as a celebrity, whatever that means, you want to do what you can to give back. The way I've always looked at it, if I'm available, I'm going to be there. And when you get there and you see what folks are doing and the lives that they're touching, how can you not want to continue to be a part of it?
And for the first time, I am looking in your eyes.
What can we all do to make a difference? Not only with trying to find a cure, but to help the children and the families that may not have the resources for these kids.
When you're looking back at me, now I understand what.
And none of us are doing enough, but I think that we're doing as much as we possibly can. Because we all live in society, and the more we can all do to help society, the more it helps all of us.
And for the first time, I am looking in your eyes. And for the first time, I'm seeing who you are. I can't believe how much I see when you're looking back at me. Now I understand what love is. Love is for the first time.
I was just saying what a gentleman he is. He's one of the nicest people in the world, and truly, truly a gentleman. I love that video. And especially seeing him interacting with, that's Wyatt, Nancy Alspaugh Jackson's son in the video, and Carter Thiero in the video as well. And just, Brian McKnight is such a stand-up guy and brilliantly talented, but you know, it's nice when you meet somebody and they're really, really, he's a gentleman. Okay, anyway, it's time for mindfulness. And so today's mindfulness, you know, it's funny, when I'm out and about and talking to people, I get to hear the feedback, and I love to hear feedback from you guys. But what I've been hearing from mindfulness, there's basically two groups of people. One group of people who they really need some help to be guided through what it is that they're trying to be mindful about. Like they need somebody talking to them and telling them what to do, because if you let them to just say, you know, this is what you're going to do for mindfulness, they have a hard time concentrating, and they'll find their mind wandering back to whatever the worries of the day are, right? And then there are other people that have a hard time visualizing something. So when you say to them, you know, picture that you're on a beach, and they're like, how do you do that? I have a hard time picturing that. So for those people, we have talked endlessly in the show about picking something, whether it's nature or your hand or a doorknob or something, and focusing on it and just noting all the things about it, like where the soft surfaces are, where the hard surfaces are, what can you see, what does it smell like, focusing on all of that and really honing in on seeing something that maybe you've taken for granted forever. Like honestly, you can pick up a leaf on a walk or pick up a flower, and I mean like a flower that's growing, a dandelion, right? And sit and look at it, and you will notice things that you didn't notice before. And that is a form of mindfulness. So if you have a hard time concentrating and visualizing something, pick something and just study it like an artist, but you're not going to sketch it. To see all the things that there are about it and experience it from all of your senses. You will notice after you do this for 5 minutes that it's a lot like taking a really refreshing nap, because your brain gets a vacation from everything else. Now, for those of you on the other side of the equation where it's like, yeah, I'm sitting and looking at the flower, and then I'm thinking about how I got to go to the grocery store, and I'm looking at the flower and I'm thinking about, you know, why didn't this session go well? And your mind just keeps wandering. A guided meditation might be a better thing for you. And one of the meditations that it's all over the internet, and you can get lots of free ones, is a chakra cleanse. And whether you believe in the whole idea of chakras or not, it isn't essential that you believe in it, right? But it is there are plenty of them that are free meditations that will take you through that there are these areas of, I don't even know that I understand, but areas of energy that are your chakras, and they're different colors. And I have found that even with young kids, they respond to colors. And the chakras are in different places in your body. The red one is lower towards your tailbone. But you know, because you're taking a color and something specifically, a place in the body, I don't know, there's something about putting those two things together that it helps people who are a little bit unfamiliar with the whole idea of visualization, and it can be really helpful for kids. And there are all different things that a guided meditation will tell you to do, but first you'll focus your mind's eye on that red chakra at the base of your tailbone, and then it will lead you through all of the meditations up through the top of your head. And as I said, you don't have to believe in the whole idea of chakras to get a benefit from it. You really don't, because what it is a vacation for your brain. It gets you in touch with yourself. You'll get in touch with your breathing, if nothing else, and it can be very refreshing. Mindfulness is about being present in the moment. So when you're gazing at a flower, being present with the flower. When you're doing a chakra cleanse, it's being present in your body and sort of turning your mind's eye inward to your body. You will feel a little bit more relaxed if you take the time to do it. Sometimes a chakra cleanse can be something, they're on iTunes, and like I said, a lot of them are free. You can find something that is as short as 5 minutes, right? But I think if you do the 5-minute one, you'll find it so gratifying, you'll want to do something that's a little bit longer. The meditation that we have for you online is not a chakra cleanse, but it's along the lines of a chakra cleanse. But ours is a meditation, and it's free for stressed out parents, and in particular parents of special needs, to give you that oomph, to feel like you're capable of doing something. It'll center your breath, and it's 11 minutes. So try it. I know sometimes people go, oh, where would I find the time? Where would I find the time? The truth is, you don't need very much time to practice mindfulness. It can be 3 minutes here, 3 minutes there. That 3 minutes when you're waiting to pick your child up at speech, when you're there but they're not quite done, great opportunity to do mindfulness. Maybe you're in the carpool line and having to wait, those moments of frustration, and you can be mindful. You can be mindful while you're driving the car and looking at different things, as long as you can focus on driving your car, right? So mindfulness is a really good thing for all of us, helps to reduce that stress. It's like having an insurance policy for when those really stressful moments come, right? All right, we're gonna take a break, and then when we come back, we have our guest, Rob Baer, is next up on our timeline, and he's gonna talk to us about autism in the corporate world, something that he experienced with a late diagnosis, and seeing his view of how things work in that corporate world. Stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back. You're live on Autism Live, and I've got my friend Jennifer here. I'm so excited she's here to help me. She's got a son named Dylan. I got a son named Jeff. We got all sorts of allergy issues. And a lot of you say, what the heck can we do to eat breakfast that's not full of carbs?
And getting my son to eat vegetables.
Oh, yeah. This is a vegetable. So we're going to eat vegetables today. And so what we're making is a zucchini muffin. So let's go ahead and get started. So we just dumped in our zucchinis. You can start with less if you want to graduate your kid to actually eating healthy. We're going to do some eggs. And again, I use the organic cage-free eggs. So there's our eggs. I'm going to add in our oil. Again, I use a high heat oil, and the reason why I use a high heat oil, because when you bake, you want to make sure you're using an oil that doesn't disintegrate, because when oil gets too hot and it's not meant to get hot, it becomes toxic. So you got to be careful with your oils. So there goes our maple syrup, and again, organic maple syrup. What we're going to add next is cinnamon and our baking soda, baking powder to our mix. There's a lot of variations on flours. A lot of our kids are allergic to wheat, so there's a lot of things we can do to make this SCD, specific carbohydrate compliant, or just gluten-free, casein-free, soy-free. And flaxseed meal. Flaxseed meal is a great resource for extra fiber within the kids' diets. We're just going to turn on this fabulous, wonderful KitchenAid, and we're good. It's a great, great looking batter. And what we're going to do is talk a little bit about baking ware. Almost everything is aluminum, and aluminum can be a problem for some kids, especially kids that can't methylate and take the toxins out with their body. But if you've got, like me, I've got muffin tins, so I have the ability to just simply put in some cupcake holders, and that actually holds that together if I want to freeze it. Hey, nice work. Those look good, but wait till you see them when they're done.
All right.
So go ahead and pull them out. Here are the fabulous muffins. Now, if you've got a sensory kid that doesn't like vegetables, I can already I Spy the zucchini. Remember what I told you earlier? Resolve that simply by peeling off the green layer, and then it will cook literally translucent. Such a nice golden brown. I love how the texture is. We know that the breakfast can be a challenge. This makes that process a whole lot easier for you and your family. I really appreciate all the feedback. We definitely want to hear from you for our next segment. If you'd like us to cook something or maybe make an old favorite and that's allergy-free, we can do that here on Autism Live. So give us your feedback. You can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook page like everybody, facebook.com/autismlive. And also you can reach Taka on the Taka website at Taka Now. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for joining us on Autism Live.
Didn't those look good? I'm hungry. But everything that Lisa makes looks good, tastes good, has good textures, smells good. She really is kind of a GFCF miracle in the kitchen. And it's a fabulous thing to be in her kitchen, I'm just saying. Okay, so we wanted to take just a minute before the interview because we had a couple of questions. One in particular that somebody said, do you speak Spanish? You know, I was born in Puerto Rico, but my Spanish speaking skills, at one time, you know, I majored in Spanish in high school because where I went to school, you had to have a major, and so that was my major. And I was considered fluent at one point, and I am appalled that I just didn't keep up on it. And I, especially in the last year, I've been trying because my son has been taking Spanish at school, and I have a new niece who came to us from Colombia who, of course, was fluent in Spanish and not fluent in English. But she, you know, has put me to shame this last year because she's been learning English at a much faster rate than I have been learning Spanish. The truth is that I can understand much more Spanish than I can speak. My receptive is much higher than my expressive. So it's always fun when I'm someplace and people are speaking Spanish and I can pick up enough that then I can respond, and then they go, oh, okay, we didn't know that you understood what we were saying. That's always a fun thing. And especially if you hand me something to read, I can get the gist of things, but isn't it sad and horrible and appalling that I was not in a place, you have to keep up with the language, and I wasn't in a place where there were other Spanish speakers for a period of time and lost a lot of it. So that bums me out. But my son is learning Spanish, and he's very excited to be learning Spanish, and I'm picking little things back up. But, you know, when people say to me, do I speak? And I say, un poquito. And very sadly, un poquito. You know, for a while here on the show, we did a segment called Autismo y Familia, and that was hosted by Juan Ronderas. And he did a great job, and I thought it was a wonderful thing. In fact, there is one video. We have a whole playlist. I'm sure it's hard to find, but there is a playlist that's just the Autismo y Familia. And there was one day that we were doing an interview with Temple Grandin, and Juan happened to be just walking by as we were starting, and I said, what are you doing right now? And he said, I've got, you know, something, but I can hold off on it. Do you need something? I said, yes. So we did a real-time translation that people asked questions, Dr. Grandin answered them, and then Juan would translate it into Spanish. And I'll tell you what, it was one of my proudest days here. I was so thrilled that we were able to do that, and would love to do more of that. I keep trying to find somebody who's got the time and energy to come in and do some segments for us all in Spanish because it's super duper important. We know that that's an underserved population and they need that information. So please know it's on my list of things that I worry about and I'm trying to figure out. I saw Juan recently because he moved away and I was like, Juan, you have to come back or do it long distance or something. It's a lot of work to put together guests. It really is. It's a lot of work. And he was like, yeah, whatever. But we're trying to identify somebody who can do that and so that we can put more things. But go watch those videos, Autismo y Familia. All right. And we're going to take a break and be back. This time, I mean it, with our guest, Rob Baer. Stick with us.
Potty training is different for every child. A child could come in with absolutely, no control over their bladder. And as long as that's not a medical issue, then we can certainly approach it behaviorally and give them the tools they need to be successful, just like any other skill that we would teach.
Well, we think he's learning to pee on the potty. No big successes yet and lots of accidents. Here is the laundry from today.
For some of our kids takes, just a couple days. And then for other kids, it can take months and months and months. And then when you're looking at complete independence, it can take years.
Hey, you have to go pee-pee?
There's a lot of different ways to tell if a child is ready. We look for a couple different things. Probably the most important is parents saying, I need this to happen, I'm ready. Second is, a child showing interest in the bathroom, and some of it is simply age. It's time to go ahead and work on this.
What are you doing? Pooping. You're pooping?
You first start with teaching the child what they need to do on the toilet. The basic thing we want is for them to drink as much liquid as possible. It's inevitable that if you drink a bunch of liquid, you're gonna pee.
Help. No, I can't help you pee. Help. I can hold your hand, but I can't help you pee.
Ultimately, what we want is that, the child, as soon as they're put on the toilet, they urinate. So that's step one. Step two is usually working through the amount of time that they're off of the toilet and making sure that they're not having accidents during the time that they're off. So this is kind of the bladder control stage of things.
So the purpose of the potty log is just to see how long it takes them as soon as they sit on the potty for them to actually urinate, and the amount of time that he's able to hold his urine. And with the log, we're able to visually see how long it takes them each time and if they have accidents or not. He's on a half-hour potty schedule, so if he doesn't go when we take him, then we have to take him in 10 more minutes. So every 10-minute intervals until he does go, and then we reset the clock, and it's 30 minutes again.
Okay, buddy. Okay, last chance to go pee-pees. Do we reset it for 10?
Oh, what does that mean? What does that mean, Jack? It's potty time! We can come play after. Hurry!
What we hope happens in this time is that the kids will learn how to initiate going to the bathroom on their own. This is oftentimes the hardest part of potty training, is because they get so used to somebody telling them when they need to go that they're not really recognizing the signs just in their own body of when they need to go.
Oh, he wet himself.
Uh-oh. Big wet?
Was it a lot? We can reset to half an hour now.
The biggest thing for parents is not to give up. The other big tip, and I think pitfall that a lot of parents fall into, is putting their children back into pull-ups or diapers, especially if they're starting to have accidents. And this is probably the worst thing that you can do. They need to recognize that feeling of fullness in their bladder and take themselves to the bathroom or tell an adult that they need to go to the bathroom.
What do you have to do? You have to put your pee-pee in the potty. Okay, give it a shot. See if you can put it in there. There you go. You're doing it. Yay, Jack. Big prayer for your pee-pee. Big prayer for your pee-pee. Yay! Woo! Yay! Good job. What a big boy. High five, high five, high five, high five, high five, high five, high five. Yay!
Welcome back to Autism Live. Joining us via Skype is Rob Baer. He is an amazing gentleman who is speaking out about autism in the corporate world, and there's nobody who would know more about this because he got a late in life diagnosis after having worked in the corporate world for many, many years as a software engineer. So it's all a little fascinating. Rob, we want to welcome you to the show and thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Well, thank you, Shannon. It's great to be here. I appreciate your show and the work that you do very much, and the opportunity to speak to your audience.
Well, and likewise, I appreciate that you're a bit of a man on a mission to share information and knowledge from an insider's point of view, an insider in the corporate world, but an insider as somebody who got a diagnosis. But your diagnosis came relatively late in life. I'm curious, Rob, what were the things that made you question whether you needed to go and get a diagnosis? What were the red flags for you?
Well, to begin with, as a young kid, around 2 years old, I noticed that I was not fitting in with other kids. I was at a daycare center. I didn't fit in with the kids, and it was mostly because of the dynamics of the people at the daycare center. They would pick me up, take me over, and set me away from the other kids because they observed I wasn't interacting with them a whole bunch. So they'd kind of put me off by myself and keep an eye on me. I'm not sure why they did that, other than, again, autistic people, for some individuals, are a management challenge because their intuition doesn't work. Later in life, I made a friend who was a psychiatrist, a really nice guy. We were ham radio operators. We talked on the radio. We got together for coffee, had dinner together. Now, that was back, I started hanging around with him in 1983, and then I moved out of my hometown back in about 1997, and so we didn't have a lot of direct contact after that. He said that he believed that I might be part of this unusual neurological group that was kind of like autistic and kind of like Asperger's, but I didn't have enough disability to be considered diagnostically significant. So we had lots of talks about it. He gave me a specialized intelligence test for creative and analytical problem solvers. I did well on that. But I never saw him professionally. We were just buddies and we hung around together. Then, in 2012, I was dating a girl who always complained that I was lacking passion, and one day she became angered at me and said, I read a book about Bill Gates. It says he has Asperger's syndrome. I think you have Asperger's syndrome. You better see a doctor. She walked out of my house and I never saw her again.
Wow.
So I happened to be sitting at my computer when she said that. So I looked up autism, Asperger's syndrome, then found out about autism and read up on it. And I thought, this is interesting. I'll have to come back to this and look at it. About a month later, I did. And to tell the truth, it was a great feeling, understanding, and I'm an analytical type. It was data to me, not unemotional data, but I looked at the logical part first, and I went, aha, I know what's going on. You know, it's kind of like an engine. If it's not running right, as soon as you find out what's making it not run right, that's good data you can work with. Well, then when I started reading the stories of autistic people, I realized that there were a lot of people out there like me, and a lot of them were having similar experiences. Most of them were not getting their lives started, and if they did, they were miserable. So I kept reading, and eventually I started reaching out to people to say, how can I help? Because I was horrified by the stories, just horrified. It was gut-wrenching. It was very similar to the feeling you get when you've walked out of Schindler's List. I just had this gut, almost putrid feeling. So Then I ended up connecting with a guy who was teaching one of those classes in software testing to a bunch of autistic college students, made some more connections, ended up in a research program, and there I was professionally evaluated as the intake into the research program. And I've been in 3 studies now, and I'm going to start a 4th one next Wednesday, where they look at adults, especially older adults, and various levels of functioning, and look at, like, for instance, aging, coping skills, etc. But that's the story of how I discovered and I'm autistic and actually got a diagnosis.
Amazing. And I'm curious because a lot of people write in, I'm just going to be honest, and they'll say, you know, I think it's possible that I'm on the spectrum, or I think this person that I care about very much is on the spectrum. But is it worthwhile, is always the question. Is it worth the trouble to go get the diagnosis and the expense? Well, the thing that they ask me, and I don't know, so I couldn't wait to ask you, is did your life change because of the diagnosis in a really substantive way? Was it worth it finding out, that's what it is?
To me personally, yeah, it was tremendously helpful, and it did redirect my life in that I walked away from software engineering, and I'm now ramping up as an advocate for people like me. Now, being an advocate, being an autistic person, advocating other autistic people is a challenge because, believe it or not, autistic people have very little credibility, generally speaking, in the among autism professionals. They really don't want to include us that much as mentors or in any other capacity. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
The question, has your life changed as a result? And I think you are answering the question is,
yeah.
You know, I think there are people watching who are like, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I probably have some of these features too, but what happens after you get the diagnosis that makes it worthwhile? So knowing that these things about yourself.
For me, that was it. And for other people, I think the data might be very, very valuable for them, just the information to work with. However, when walking into a diagnosis, I would be very careful to be aware of the stigmas associated with autism, and that they are in fact stigmas. And so that if you do get a positive diagnosis, they do confirm that you're autistic, that you understand the context of the diagnosis, because diagnosis can be psychologically devastating, as I think your question essentially dances around the fact that a diagnosis without proper preparation can be psychologically devastating and limiting to the autistic person.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's one of the things that people weigh and they ask us the question, and I just don't feel informed enough to answer it. But you know, how is it going to be good for me? Because there is a little bit of a stigma attached that isn't necessarily appropriate. So it's good to hear that it meant good things for you.
It did, and it also opens up options, because today, while autism is treated entirely as a disability, and when we run into issues in workplaces, school, etc., it's treated as a socialization issue attributable to the autism, the person who's autistic. The reality is, similar to what was done with women in workplaces and schools, is it's best to model it as a cultural difference. At the point where it is being substantially modeled as a cultural difference, we're going to have a little bit better acceptance in workplaces and schools. And that actually, I'm getting a little bit ahead of the questions now, but one of the key issues I've realized in being an autistic student And I did end up with a bachelor degree and a master degree in computer science. I got through school. Now, I was functionally illiterate till I was 23 years old due to learning disabilities. Is a lot of the communication that happens in corporate worlds is nonverbal. A lot of managers, a lot of teachers use nonverbal reinforcements, and they read their students or their workers using nonverbal communication. Initially, if you think back to the old days, 1955 is often used as the height of the chauvinist era in businesses. Men couldn't relate to women. Well, human resources departments, schools, etc., found ways to get around that, and it's worked very, very well. If those same methods and attitudes are applied to what are now called socialization issues of autism, all of a sudden those problems will functionally evaporate.
Now, this is all so fascinating to me, Rob, because to say that you were functionally illiterate until you were 23, and yet you were successful at getting jobs and holding on to jobs and becoming a software engineer. And all of these things were happening, that all this nonverbal communication. How did you navigate all this? How were you still successful?
There's actually a pretty simple answer. The implementation can be a little complex, but I always stuck to facts and logic. By doing that, I always had something factually to show. Very often, instructors didn't like me because I appeared to be an inattentive student. Also, a lot of teaching is nonverbal. The teacher lets you know nonverbally when you know enough to pass the test and stop asking questions. And we autistic people don't get that. They don't get that. Teaching is actually when you were a teacher, I believe, at one time, weren't you?
Yes.
Okay. And teachers very often want the connection with students. That's where they feel the real talent in teaching is connecting with the students. It's hard for a teacher to connect with someone like me. On top of that, again, teaching is essentially you learn enough to pass the test. That's not all it is, but it really is. And what is necessary to pass a test? What is necessary to, okay, stop paying attention to this area and move on to another one is expressed non-verbally by the teacher when they're in front of the class. And there's so many other things that are done, and we just don't get it. We don't understand it. We can't connect. The current teaching paradigm actually can't work for us very well.
And so you're speaking out now, and you've become an advocate. And what advice is it that you want to give to all of us so that we can bridge this gap? Because there are more and more people identified as being on the autism spectrum. There are more and more true need for us to include these individuals in the corporate world because they bring skills, but this social thing, this bumps. What's the advice to those of us on the neurotypical side so that we can make this a better situation for people on the autism spectrum?
You know what? That is an absolutely brilliant question. And I know it's an obvious question, but I can't tell you how glad I am you asked. It comes down to current management dynamics. Have you ever heard the term people manager, and the person who is a people manager says, I don't need to know what my people are doing. I don't need to know how they do what they're doing because I know how to manage people. Have you ever heard that?
I have heard that.
You hear it a lot.
Yeah.
Now, what they're doing is they are actually managing by nonverbal cues. When I show up in a manager's office and the manager asks me, Rob, how are you doing on your project? And I say, fine, everything's going well, come look at it. They don't want to look at it because they don't understand what I'm doing and it means nothing to them. And they have no way to look at what I'm doing and sense that there's progress. they are depending on the nonverbal communication so that when I say everything is doing fine, they can judge that either I'm telling them the truth or I'm not telling them the truth. That is one of the key points of corporate and even school dynamics, is that this nonverbal communication is used as a way for those people to manage other people when they don't know what they're doing or how they do what they do.
So what should we be doing instead?
Well, think about, and this is an easy answer. You're going to be surprised by how easy this is. Think about the old days of chauvinism in businesses. Men could not relate to women very often in a workplace. Women were inexperienced with being in a workplace and workplace dynamics, and it just didn't work until somebody came along and said, okay, it's time for an attitude change. And guess what? It's not the problem with the women. It's not the woman's tone of voice that sounds wimpy. It's the problem with the current management, the way things are managed. So in the area of men dealing with women, men were just simply told, shape up and listen to what a woman says. Don't listen to the way she's saying it. Don't look at her cleavage. Don't look at whether she has big hair or not. Listen to what she's saying, and if you aren't competent in understanding what she says, you are not competent as a manager. So this is actually, and I know this is going to come as a surprise to you and your listeners, acceptability of autistic people in workplaces for many of us can be as simple as implementing the same paradigm that was used for including women in those workplaces.
It's very interesting. I'm going to have to roll that around a little and see how that, it's very interesting. Because I have the opportunity in my life to be working with individuals who are on the autism spectrum. And I want the situations to work as much as anybody could, because I have a son who's on the spectrum, and I want him to inherit a world in which people are excited about what he brings to the table when he comes to his job, because he's got mad skills. So I want to walk that talk. So I'm gonna take that for a spin and get back to you, Rob, and see how that works for me. I'm not used to thinking of things from the point of view of a male chauvinist pig, but I'll try it on and see if I can, what I mean.
I'll give you an easy method that I'm including in the book that I'm writing, and that is, today we have the autism spectrum disorder, and as part of that, the world automatically, when something happens with an autistic person, they attribute it to a socialization issue. And they attribute all these things that need to be cured rather than accepted and dealt with. What I contend is that that's very similar to a hypothetical woman spectrum disorder. And if you look back again to the 50s, generally centered around 1955, being a woman was treated as being a disability. Being a woman who walked into a workplace and all of a sudden there were issues with the men, she was the socialization issue. And the way of treating it was simply keep women out until women can somehow overcome these issues. The HR industry found a great way to take care of that, and that is, they said, well, we're not going to sit around and wait until somebody answers the question, chicken or egg. All these eggs are coming in, and we are going to be looking more at those people who object to women and can't work with women than we are going to look at the women and say, essentially, we need to cure women of the characteristics of being a woman.
Absolutely. I totally get what you're saying, and I think it's amazing. Rob, we're almost out of time. Where can people get more information about you? Do you have a website so that when your book comes out, they'll know where to go?
Well, the website is currently down. It's robbehr.com, ROBBEHR.com. That should be up in about 30 days. So if your users want to go out, save it, and to come back later, that would be great. My book, I think, will be a great resource if you find the theories that I've just presented to be reasonable and interesting. However, the book makes an appeal to common sense. I give new perspectives on things, kind of the same way that a women's advocate gave new perspectives on women from, about 1945 forward, which is really the age of new feminism. The best resource people have is their own brain. Think about what I've said, think it through, see how reasonable that is. It's a human brain is a great resource. Common sense is excellent. Metaphors use great. Just think through the history of the women's movement, the challenges women have had, the challenges autistic people currently have, and look side by side and see, is a difference really, should it be modeled as a disability or should it be modeled as a cultural difference? And if the cultural difference can be worked around by simply listening to what somebody says and managers and coworkers being competent enough to understand their job and make decisions, you've covered most of the issues I've had in my life and many autistic people have had in their life. Obviously, there are people with comorbid conditions and true severe disability, but there are an awful lot of us out there who are really, if we were modeled differently, if the attitude were different, the problems with autism would disappear.
Well, I think that's a very inspirational message, and we thank you so much for being with us. And give us the website again so that in 30 days people will know where to find you.
Okay. It is Rob Baer, my name, ROBBEHR.com. And Shannon, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate your show and your open-mindedness to looking at all of the different theories, all of the different angles. Because to be honest, most of the autism professionals that I've tried to describe these things to, they aren't bad people, but they are very stuck in the stereotypes, so they attempt to correct my perceptions rather than listening to what I have to say.
Well, that's not going to work, and they need to realize that, right?
I'll close with this because I know time is getting short. One of the huge problems with the autism industry is they don't include us, the very high-level autistic people, in their professional positions or in evaluating the issues facing autistics and how to handle those issues. It's very similar to the old boys club where, okay, you need to deal with bringing women into a business, so let's get the guys together and discuss it. And when women ask to show up, they are kind of intuitively dismissed as not understanding the issues of business and workplace dynamics. We are being intuitively dismissed the same way. I regret to say that, but that's what's happening.
Well, and I regret that that is the case, and I know that that is the case in a lot of places. I think we're finding more and more places that don't feel that way, and I think that's where we all have to move. Is to that. I mean, I honestly, as a parent, I can't imagine any other direction than going in that direction. So I thank you for your advocacy. I thank you for the mission that you're on, and thank you for being with us here today, Rob.
Okay. Thank you, Shannon.
Take care.
You have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. And the inspiration continues. So we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to be back with Yadira Calderon, and she's going to be talking about her journey with her daughter, how dyslexia and autism go together, and how she finds autism the happy place. Stick with us.
Do you provide care services to someone with autism? Recently, more and more children are being diagnosed with the condition and getting the support they need as awareness grows. But what happens to these children as they grow up? It's estimated that over 500,000 youth with autism will turn 18 in the next decade, and they'll be faced with a very difficult reality. As children with autism grow up, their services start to disappear or become very difficult to access. Things like medical care, mental health counseling, vocational training, and more. All services that are still desperately needed. The loss of support that youth with autism face as they grow up is so severe that it's referred to in the autism community as falling off a cliff. Adults with autism need the same level of support they had as children to avoid falling off the services cliff. Introducing Skills Living, the web-based software designed specifically to help transitioning youth and adults with autism so they can avoid the cliff and instead fly to success. With Skills Living, help your learner with autism develop the skills they need in all the critical areas of adult life, including self-control, planning, and problem-solving, effective communication, performing life skill tasks for independent living, acquiring and maintaining employment or other meaningful activities, developing and maintaining social skills and relationships, accessing transportation and public services, and being safe. Skills Living includes a comprehensive assessment, a data collection mobile app, behavior intervention plan builder, and automatic progress reporting. It also provides a complete curriculum addressing 16 key areas spanning the entire range of functioning adulthood. Skills Living is easy to use and can be implemented by schools, parents, and autism service providers. Call or click today for your free demo and see how Skills Living can help your learner with autism avoid the cliff and instead reach their fullest potential. Skills Living. Wish, learn, become.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We've been having a real tour de force day, jumping all over the world and all over the United States, talking to different people with different inspirational viewpoints having to do with autism, and we're not done. Because joining us right now via Skype is Yadira Calderon. She's coming to us from Florida. She's an amazing mom, and we're thrilled that she's here with us. So Yadira, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Thrilled to have you here. And you have a daughter who's on the autism spectrum. Tell us a little bit about her and about how you first discovered that she was on the autism spectrum.
Yes, I have a bombastic, spectacular, almost 10-year-old who sometimes thinks she's 25. But in December 2010, all of a sudden, out of the blue, my daughter stopped speaking. My daughter started lining things. My daughter stopped doing everything fun that she had been doing before, and she was repeating everything in 3 languages. She was 2.5 at the time. So this is like a big wake-up call. It's very scary as a parent to be going through this. And I immediately think, what am I going to do right now? 2010, technology is available, social media, so I get online and I immediately begin reading because for some reason, something in my brain, TikTok told me this could be autism. So out of the 10 or 12 main descriptions of an individual on the autism spectrum, my daughter had 8 of them. And I was like, wow, this is big. What am I going to do about this right now?
And so that's kind of amazing already to say that much because, you know, for a lot of us, we came to it much slower, but you seem like you were somebody who's really on it. And quite honestly, from what I've read about you, it seems like you just are incredibly on it. You're an amazing mom. But I got to wonder, this is a tough journey for anyone, but it's especially tough, I think, for the families where they have a girl on the spectrum because almost everything is geared towards the boys. Did you find that to be true, or did you tend to focus on what's good? What did you do once your daughter was diagnosed?
Thank you. Yes, indeed. The priority became her. What are her needs? How can we make her life better? What is happening? Why is she not sleeping? Why is she walking on her tippy toes? Why is she vomiting every night? You know, why is she screaming certain times of the month? How come she doesn't want to get in the bathtub to get clean? And there's this major crisis going on. And why, when I call my child, she does not respond? So what do? I became a mom at 40 years old. So I had lived and I had been me and I had enjoyed, traveled, etc. So at this point, the woman, Yadira, is not what mattered. I was on adrenaline. I said, I have to do something about this. My daughter is going to be diagnosed. Instinctively, I knew it. What can we do? So hands-on, 2 pediatricians in Puerto Rico. We were living in Greece. then. Nothing happened in Greece. I go to my tribe, to my community, okay, my family, the friends. Two developmental pediatricians tell me she has autism. I was like, ouch, okay, fine. What do we do about this? And they both said, autism is medical, address the medical issues and your child will come back. And this was regardless whether it was a male or a female. It was just the diagnosis, you know, and it was very obvious. She was 3 at the time when she was finally diagnosed. So, and again, I tell them, what do I do? What can we do about this long term? What is going to happen? They're like, hands on, you have to read a lot. A lot of people that tell you they know about autism, they don't. So keep reading, keep asking questions. I had a wonderful positive experience 20 plus years ago, and I didn't know it was going to be meaningful and had incredible repercussions. I worked as an editor for the meat processing industry in Latin America, and I had the opportunity to meet, guess who? Temple Grandin. I had her in front of me. And all I saw, I was told, you're going to meet Temple Grandin. It's like, okay, who is she? It's like, oh, she's incredible and she has autism. And it's like, autism? Okay, fine, whatever. So here I am in front of Temple Grandin, and all I saw was grandiosity. And all I saw was being able. And all I saw was passion about what she loved most, which was the humane handling of animals as they were going to be slaughtered. So this was my first experience, you know.
What a great first experience for a mom of a daughter. Does Temple know that part of your story now? She would love that.
To this extent, I don't think she does. And if you can transmit that message to her, I would love to share that with her.
The next time I see her, I'm going to let her know. That would mean a lot to her.
That guided my path. Okay, and that's why the word impossible, and I'm very saddened, I'm very involved in the community. I interact with at least 500 parents from around the world right now, thanks to the internet and social media. I always ask them, what were you told when your child was diagnosed? And at least 75% of them tell me, I was told my child will never say I love you, and my child will have to be institutionalized. And I think that is ridiculous that this day and age, parents are being told this message that does not make sense. Yes, it is a lot of work, and it takes dedication, and it takes commitment, and it takes, unfortunately, putting aside you, the person, or the woman, or the dad, or the male in the household, to say, this is not what is important right now, but we have to take care of our child. And so this is a decision for parents who their children are recently diagnosed. I beg you, cry, stomp your feet, punch a wall, do it for 2 weeks, grieve, but move on. You have to, because your child needs you. This is very hands-on. There's a lot you have to learn, and there's a lot you don't know. Still, after 7 years, just about, my daughter having been diagnosed, I still wonder, why is she doing that? You know, where does this come from? And I keep reading more, and I keep trying to understand, and I simplify it by just making sure that I let love guide me, and take a deep breath and seek incredible levels of patience, you know, and making sure that my daughter will always know this is hard for you, but it is also difficult for me, and we need to move forward. We're going to overcome this, you know, and I need your help too. Now she understands. Now she speaks again. You know, she is conscious. She's aware. She finally learned how to read last year, because we needed to work with a tutor, you know, because the school system was not providing the methodology she needed, because she was diagnosed with dyslexia. Dyslexia, in its marvelousness that it could become, it is very challenging for an individual on the autism spectrum, because the process of learning how to learn, if your teachers and the school districts in this country do not understand that and apply this, and the teachers to be that are in college right now, that are being trained, if you are not being told, children on the autism spectrum, children with learning disabilities in general, they need to be taught how to learn. I beg you, call me, write to me, let's talk, and let's go speak to the curriculum writers, because something needs to change. What is being done right now is not 100% functional. There are some incredible teachers that are doing this commitment, this labor of love, but they need help and they need support. I've seen it. I've worked in 3 middle schools.
You've taken us to church. I don't even want to interrupt because you're on fire and it's fabulous. And I want people to hear that this is not easy and this has not been easy for you, but that you're keeping it positive and you're keeping moving forward, and that makes all the difference. So we're running out of time, but I almost don't even want to ask you questions because you're doing fine on your own. But I do want for parents to know that you've been able to help your daughter with dyslexia and that she's improving and that things are going in the right direction, because it can seem overwhelming to people. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, dyslexia, a dyslexic brain is spectacular. What they can do, what they can achieve, there is no limit, but they need to be guided. They need to be provided. They do not learn like many of us may. You are shown something or you are told something and you instinctively react. An individual with dyslexia needs to be shown. They need to hear it. They need to see it. They need to touch it. If it needed, they need to smell it. Create some kind of image that will help them relate the words and what they are seeing. The big sign was that between 4 and 5, my daughter loved letters. And when they evaluated her, oh, wonderful, she loves letters. Personally, I believe that's one of the first signs. You know, they become obsessed with letters and they want to repeat them. But at the same time, when it comes to working on putting these letters in writing and trying to read these letters together, it doesn't happen. They don't know how to do it. I didn't know how to help her. So I go to the school system and I tell them, she's starting to write some of her letters. She's writing them in the inverse. The B becomes a D, the S, it becomes a snake in the opposite direction. These are typical signs of dyslexia. And unfortunately, many school systems, many districts, they are being discounted and parents are being told, no, that's part of growing up, it's in stage. And then you have a child in 3rd grade who reads at kindergarten level, because that's what is happening right now, because teachers are not being trained to recognize the signs of dyslexia. There's a lot of hope. It is a lot of work. I personally have to say that if the school system is not providing what your child needs, you need to find a tutor trained in multisensory methodology. We're speaking Ortho Gillingham. That is the Mac Daddy of the methods. It works. It is intense. To find some of those teachers, it's not cheap. It costs money, but it is so worth it. I saw my child becoming bright-eyed, excited, reading paragraphs of the books that before I was the one who had to read them to her over and over and over, because she wanted more, but she could not respond. Dyslexia also makes it very difficult when it comes to homework. Your child cannot make the connection between the brain, those areas of the brain, and the hand in order to write your answers correctly. So parents, there's tons of information online. Again, if you have any questions, please email me. You can find me on autismhappykingdom.com, on the internet, on Facebook, Autism the Happy Kingdom, and I can provide and share. I am an open book. I have been helped, and I am a firm believer in helping others, and I believe in creating that community of support that's going to guide you and help you move your child forward.
Oh, Yadira, my sister from another lifetime is what I feel. I'm so feeling what you're saying here. It's amazing. Now you're writing a book. When's your book coming to us?
I am working on it. You know, just this reality. You need money to get the things out there, and you know, you need social media support. You need to be able to print these books. So in the meantime, I have the website. I write the blogs, you know, about a variety of topics, what we live, what we survive, how we are handling it. So I really looking forward to the opportunity to publish our book, Autism the Happy Kingdom.
So people need to go to autismthehappykingdom.com to be able to access the blog, correct?
autismhappykingdom.com. Correct. Yes.
And you've also got a Facebook page. So, because if you found this, didn't I promise you inspiration? If you found this inspirational and you want more of it, go check out her blog. We're out of time, and I wish we weren't, but honestly, I don't know if you heard me say before, but I was born in Puerto Rico, so we need to connect later.
Big time. We must. I thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for reaching out. And please keep inspiring families. The work that you're doing is simply spectacular.
Right back at you. I think the same thing about you. So thank you so much for being with us and doing the work that you're doing. And again, autismhappykingdom.com. Check it out and wait for the book. But we'll have to have you back again because you were just delightful.
Thank you.
And so inspirational. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And we're here at the end of the show. We've only got like less than a minute, but I want to remind everybody that this Sunday, I'm going to be at SpecFest. And we're going to try to attempt to go live from SpecFest. So be checking out. It starts at 4, but we'll probably start our live feed around 3:30, I think, depending on what's going on. And it will go from 4 to 6. So we will cover some of the things live, not the movies, but we'll show you the audience reactions to the movies because we want you to go to their website to see the movies, but we'll cover the live performances. I'm so excited about it, and I hope you guys will check it out on Autism Live Facebook because it'll be Facebook Live. And then we'll be back on Wednesday for a very special show before we get to Memorial Day. So until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.